Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth weekly astrology overview for week commencing the 22nd of April. I'm going to share with you the standout details of this week and also the event chart, which provides the backdrop that we can all collectively relate to. And there is going to be some big action with a potent and intense full moon in the sign of Scorpio and Mercury going direct. But please stay with me. I will then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, your sun, or your moon. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. We have found, though, that 55% of people who view my videos are not subscribers. If you've yet to subscribe, please click or tap that subscription button and also the alert bell. Every time I drop a video, you will get an update from YouTube. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials beneath this video. I don't edit these just come in and we share them as is. Explore how people have found working with me. If you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please go to patrickarundell.com/subscribe. I've been producing these for near to 30 years. My work is featured in one of Britain's most read daily newspapers and websites the world over. I also provide a primary influence for each day, so we can look at the astrology as well as relate to our zodiac sign. And finally, if you'd like to take advantage of my special package of getting your life roadmap reports and also your 12 months transits for 30% off, please see the link below. If you know your natal astrology, why not check out my draconic reports? That shows our soul energy, our karmic energy that we bring into this world. The natal chart is the energy we're working on within this lifetime. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart at midnight as the week begins on Monday. Now the big takeout is the energy of Jupiter and Uranus, which was so potent last week. That's still continuing. And it's going to continue right through to the 9th day of May. So that potential for change and freshness is still very much there. Jupiter and Uranus are the two planets of freedom because Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Uranus is the higher octave ruler of Aquarius. But also Uranus can be about change and can be disruptive. Jupiter can also give us an appetite to approach things with great enthusiasm. Now, it's not an aspect that's totally positive or totally bad. They're coming into unison. But of course, the host Taurus finds Uranus quite difficult because Taurus likes a degree of continuity. It's a fixed sign and it's earthy and it appreciates the good things in life. And last week, the sun moved to join them in the sign of Taurus as well. And that's where we are at the start of this week. But if you recall, Mars was very influential in their combination last week and remains so at the start of this week. So if you are trying something new and fresh in your approach to your resources or developing a business idea or a hobby that's very much to do with the arts, Mars is going to give you a lot of drive. It also can see you using skills and experiences you've gained over a very long period of time. So Mars can be a real asset as we go into this week. Also, Mercury, continuing its retrograde through to Thursday, is very close to the North Node. It's going to be important to listen to our instincts. Venus is very close also to Chiron. If there is something we need to discuss that's been a bit stuck, that's been affecting our confidence, someone we know who's got wisdom, but also a nice way of sharing that wisdom could be a real help too. But we need to be conscious of the role of Pluto. If you recall, Pluto moved back into Aquarius on the 21st of January. And there it is, up in Aquarius at 2 degrees and 4 minutes. But look at the position of the Sun, 2 degrees and 21 minutes. So they're in a very powerful conflict. Pluto is pushing us to transform our approach. The Sun has a much greater appreciation of that aforementioned continuity. So something needs to change. And of course, Jupiter and Uranus are also pushing us to be much more flexible in our approach. But again, the sign of Taurus, it doesn't find that flexibility quite so easy. So that can create some tension. The way this can play out this week, I feel, particularly by Tuesday's full moon, is that the full moon in Scorpio, which is very intense, can be quite secretive, sees a clash between the Sun in opposition with the moon. They of course represent very different principles. The Sun is about moving forwards, achieving things. It's where our thrust is going this week, whereas the moon is how we connect to others. And of course it can be about our emotional sphere and security. If we're feeling that our financial situation is not quite in trim, that could be something that really does take up a lot of our thinking over the next 2 weeks. But the signs of Taurus and Scorpio are not just about money. They can be, in terms of Scorpio, about where we're most devoted or invested in an emotional or even intimate way. So if we're interacting with someone over this next couple of weeks who shares very different values to us, Pluto in Aquarius, that can cause an issue too. It could be a friend who takes our goodwill and generosity for granted. Maybe we're finding ourselves starting to move away from someone we were very into, because of course Taurus and Scorpio are fixed signs. So if there is a change, it's not necessarily easy, but Pluto is promoting that change. Maybe the change about how society is as a whole, how we're earning money, how we're using money, even money itself is a hot topic at the moment, because of course a lot of people or a lot of places won't take cash. But cash is an important thing because it gives us some control. If it all goes over to technology, we lose that control. So there are some big questions that Jupiter and Uranus are asking. If you've yet to watch my deep dive on Jupiter and Uranus, please see the link beneath this video. In that, I explore this concept in a much more detailed way. So Pluto squaring the Sun could be some changes we need to make that we're resisting, the Sun in Taurus, or it could be some changes we are making that have some ramifications for our connections or our future. But over the next 2 weeks, whether it is about resources, intimacy, sex, whether it's about the things that need to change and make way that maybe we're resisting, or the things that are changing and making way that we're going with that other people are resisting, all of these things can be part of this week's story. But once Mercury does go direct on Thursday, communications will start to speed up and move more smoothly. But just to say, Mercury doesn't come out of its post-retrograde shadow until the 13th of May. So there may still be some loose ends that may be needed to be cleared up between this week and then. But on the whole, anything that has been a little bit stuck can start to make progress. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Please check out your in-depth weekly horoscope from Aries through to Pisces. But for now, have a great week, take care, and goodbye. Welcome Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. This gives us a flavour of what you can expect this week. But of course, planets will be moving through the week. And the big takeout is that there is a potent full moon on Tuesday. But right at the start of the week, Mars, your ruler, is in such a brilliant link with Jupiter. And when these two are collaborating, it creates a lot of self-belief and a lot of drive. Mars being in the 12th house can be dimmed somewhat, and because you have had Saturn in your 12th house for just over a year, perhaps vague concerns or low vitality have afflicted you at times. But this week, as you start the week, your instincts, past experiences and knowledge can be used in some kind of fresh way when it comes to grappling with your everyday resources. And of course, Uranus is asking or urging us all to be much more open about the way that we can handle this part of life. So that's really encouraging at the start of the week. Also, Mercury may be in retrograde through to Thursday, but it's closely allied to the North Node. Listening to your instincts is going to be important this week. Also, Venus very close to Chiron. If there is something that you have found to be a little bit of a thorny personal issue, someone kindly or insightful could give you some good advice this week, or perhaps it's going to be you who's cheering someone on. But the Sun and Pluto are continuing to clash, which, if you recall, started to develop last week. So as we go into this week, the Sun's asking you really to think about how you can work with that Uranian and Jupiterian energy which crested last week with the conjunction, and find some opportunities to edge forwards, but particularly around everyday money and really valuing what you bring to situations. Pluto can be the planet of power, but in the 11th house, that's about friendships. Is there somebody in your friendship group who tends to be a little bit dismissive of some of the things that you want to try? That is possible, but it's also possible that maybe you're connected to someone who doesn't appreciate you as much as they should do. And there could be a clashing of wills, particularly on Tuesday when we have that intense full moon in Scorpio. Scorpio energy can tend to reveal things because the sign of Scorpio and the moon can be actually quite secretive. But because Pluto's in the mix, this brings an added dimension of tension. So Pluto's T-square in the position of the Sun and the Moon. So something to do with money, shared resources, or where you're most invested emotionally or devoted, even in a romantic or intimate way, something may just chaff. And maybe it's because you and another person want something different from the future. And if this is something that has until now not been really properly aired, because Pluto is in the air sign of Aquarius, it may be important to tease out the secret, the moon in Scorpio. And if you can, by the end of the 2-week full moon period, much greater clarity can come through. And that's going to be helped hugely by Mercury going direct on Thursday in your sign. So something that has perhaps just not quite gone at the pace you want can start to pick up momentum. Thank you so much for joining me, Aries. I hope you have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 55% of people have yet to do so. If you're one of them, if you could do so now, we'd really appreciate the support this will bring. Please click or tap the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. Welcome, Taurus, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. And you can see that Jupiter and Uranus in your sign, who came together in that exact unison last week, are still very close together. But they're being sparked by the energy of Mars. Now that was influential last week as well, suggesting that a lot of experience and knowledge and skills that you've developed over a long period of time can be manifested at the present moment in a really fresh, imaginative and powerful way that can draw people to you. But your sign is known to be one that has an appreciation of continuity. You're a fixed sign. But such has been the energy in the sign of Aries recently, including your ruler Venus and the retreating Mercury, you may have felt a little more muted. Now that started to change with that dynamic combination last week, but also the Sun arriving in your sign for the first time in 11 months. Now that in itself gives you an opportunity to feel more revitalized, more in the moment, more present. But also, it does clash or did clash late last week, and it does at the start of this week, with the powerful energy of Pluto, which is right at the top of your chart. That's going to have a major impact in how you connect to the wider world over many years to come. Now, Pluto itself is going to go into a retrograde on the 2nd of May, and by the 2nd of September, we'll go back into the sector of knowledge, growth and travel for you. So you will have one final blush of the energy of your sister Earth sign of Capricorn through to the 20th of November. But the big picture suggests that your role in life is shifting, and it could mean that you're going to gain greater recognition. Of course, it all depends on what we want. Sometimes Pluto is a very subtle, if incredibly powerful influence. And maybe someone's experiencing you at the moment, or will do this week, in a way which they find a bit challenging. But it's probably because you're starting to really get in the groove. That's given you a lot of encouragement, last week's combination. But the sun moving into your sign is giving you greater momentum. But Tuesday's full moon is in the intense, sometimes secretive sign of Scorpio. So what we have is the sun competes with the moon. They're not on good terms. They have very different energies. So integrating their two energies becomes more difficult. And it's possible that someone at an emotional level may feel that you're now becoming far too single-minded on what's important to you only, what really inspires you, and what really gives you a sense of passion. Then again, somebody quite influential could find you a little bit challenging, even if it's quite subtle. So whether it's in a personal relationship or a professional one, just be aware that not everybody can deal with this revitalized, dynamic person that you're really demonstrating at the present time. So what should you do? You need to stick with being you, because the important thing with Uranus is to be authentic. And particularly if your conditioning when you were younger was very much to fit in, to comply with what was expected, the knowledge of Jupiter and the confidence, but also that more provocative, at times daring energy of Uranus has, since 2018 for 5 months, from March 2019 full time, slowly but surely urging you to break things down that don't work for you any longer. So if you're a natural born bohemian, you probably will get through this week absolutely fine. If you're someone who's much more sensitive to what other people feel, the energy in Aries recently may have affected your confidence somewhat, because there may have been some people who showed their hand in a way which surprised you. You may have felt less supported, or someone may have drifted out of your situation or hasn't been in touch. I think when Mercury goes direct on Thursday, it will really help. It comes out of the post-retrograde shadow on the 13th of May, and then you will really start to gain a lot more traction around your ideas, particularly when it moves into your sign on the 15th of May. But that's going to be challenged by Pluto too. So one way or another, and Venus also, I should say, this month on the 29th squares up with Pluto as well. So one way or another, be aware that some people, for whatever reason, could find the dynamic energies you're demonstrating at the moment, or the desire to recast your life in a much more creative and individualistic way, a bit challenging. But at times in life, we really need to stick with what's very important to us. It's very much to do with a time of evolving and demonstrating your unique qualities. Keep going, Taurus. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great week. We have found that 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. If you're one of them, please help this channel to grow by clicking or tapping on the subscription button, but also the bell notification symbol. Welcome Gemini, it's your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of May for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is your ruler Mercury will go direct later this week on Thursday. And it's in a part of your horoscope that's very much to do with your interaction with others, your network. And that has been a very dynamic area despite Mercury's retrograde. But it probably has given you quite a lot of extra information about how you can steer your future moves, which is what the 11th house is about. But the Sun last week moved into the tender 12th, very much more to do with reflection. We also had that very dynamic conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, but that linked to Mars in a very dominant part of your situation, the 10th house. And that's where we start this week's story, Gemini, because Mars, you can see, is still in that very influential position, encouraging you to overcome some of that sense of limitation that perhaps Saturn has created over the last year. But also, the way that Mars connects to Jupiter in particular is very energizing. But Jupiter is in the 12th house, which really captures the flavour of its rulership of Pisces much more, to do with faith, to do with a higher knowledge. And the 12th house can be very psychological. Your instincts, therefore, the Sun, Jupiter and Uranus, can work really well when it comes to setting your goals and ambitions, Mars, but Mercury going forwards can help you to join it all together and to connect to others very effectively. What's not to like? Well, it's just on Monday. The Sun is clashing with Pluto. So that provides a backdrop energy for the whole week. This is one of astrology's most mighty clashes. Pluto is about transformation. Since the 21st of January and for 11 weeks last year, from the 27th of March to the 11th of June, Pluto is pushing you to expand your thinking in lots of different ways. But the clash with the Sun is interesting because the Sun in house 12 wants us in some way or another just to step back a little bit and gain much more deeper psychological insights, whereas Pluto in the 9th house is much more adventurous and independent. Therefore, there could be something that is a little bit tender in your situation that may seem to come more into the open, particularly with the full moon on Tuesday. And it could be to do with not so much a health issue as such, but just trying to get your energy balance. So if you are feeling a little bit under power at the present time, there may be some physical things you can do. The moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of healing. So take a look at your diet. Are there some tweaks that you could make in terms of nutrition and the amount of exercise you're getting? If you do feel fine in a physical context, but feel a little bit out of sorts in terms of your motivation, what you can do with the full moon here is download the power of Pluto, which impacts on both the position of the Sun and the moon, to expand your knowledge, to inform you of how you can get a better balance in terms of the holistic welfare of your situation. Now, as this week goes on and Mercury goes direct on Thursday, that's really exciting for you. But Mercury is also going to be conjunct the North Node for much of this week. It's not exact, but it's close enough for you to be encouraged to listen to your instincts, particularly around the people that you can really rely upon, because the 11th house is very much about friendships. You have a gift for getting on with lots of different types of people. At the moment, the people you may find yourself drawn to the most are those people who are very empathetic, who have a real perception, quite gentle, and the energetic exchange isn't too much of a toil upon you. So your physical vitality may be a little bit lower this week, but there are still huge opportunities to grow and increase your understanding of what really makes you tick at a deeper level, but also others, and use those psychological insights to really make progress in terms of your connections with the wider world, and particularly if you are someone who's very career or goal orientated. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Gemini. If you've yet to subscribe to this channel, can I say that 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers? Please help our channel to grow by clicking that sub button and the bell notification symbol. But for now, have a great week, good luck and goodbye. Welcome Cancer to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart, which provides the backdrop for the whole week. Now, last week we saw that glittering conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which for you occurred in the 11th house, very much to do with your connections to others, your network, your friendships, but also your highest aspirations. It's a pretty idealistic combination, and the Sun moved to join them last week too. Now, ordinarily, that would see you pretty focused on reaching out to others. Perhaps your social situation would take an uptick, but we need to be mindful of the role of Pluto, because Pluto squares up to the Sun. And that suggests there could be some politics in the mix. If your desire to steer your future direction isn't quite meshing with someone close to you, or the need for finance to really manifest what's truly important to you is limited at the present time, as we go into the full moon on Tuesday, you could be quite conscious of that. But it's a full moon that does give you gifts, because it's in your sister water sign of Scorpio. The 5th house is very much about you showcasing your unique talents, your creativity, your passion. The 11th house is more about where we lean into the needs of other people. And perhaps you could feel that your personal opportunities may be in some ways blunted by other demands. But Pluto does T-square the two positions of the Sun and the Moon. So over the next couple of weeks, it does suggest there could be a little bit of politics, especially if you're in a close relationship, whether it's a business partnership, a family relationship, or romantically, where your need to move forwards and develop your situation in some ways is blunted or inhibited by someone else having a different approach or a different set of values to you, or perhaps that finance, which is important, is not quite there. But do take hope, Cancer, because Mars, the planet of desire, but also the planet of intense passion, continues in your 9th house, which is a very buccaneering part of your chart for Mars to be, and he's forging a very impressive link with Jupiter still as this week begins, and the two are high energy. So even if you do need to marshal your time carefully as you toggle the demands of others or what you want to do with that full moon, that particular aspect is one of the best you can have in astrology for really going for it. And because you are a very caring sign, and back to that wheel, you can see the moon does start the week in house 4, and that really connects to your instinct of protection and nurture. But sometimes it is important to be a bit more daring, and that combination between Jupiter and Uranus is urging you to cut free from things that have held you back in the past, whether it's self-limiting thinking, whether you have got some people around you who are quite conservative. I think more radical approaches and people who are more exciting are really going to grip you in times to come. And that can also be true of your work. Now, you can see in your 10th house, we do have the retrograde Mercury pretty close to the North Node. And that just suggests that it's important to listen to your instincts, because by the end of this week, Mercury is going to be connecting to Venus in an extremely positive way. And if you did need to speak to someone, do a presentation, send in an application, come up with some new approach in your own business or enterprise, or speak to someone in terms of raising that finance, the combination between Mercury and Venus is about as good as it gets when it comes to charm and persuasion. And Mercury coming out of its retrograde is also going to be very, very helpful to that process. You can also see that Venus is very close to Chiron as we start this week. Your instincts in terms of marshalling money, Venus, but also relationships, in terms of that caring instincts that's very much part of you, can actually be qualities that someone can become very mindful of as this week goes on. Cancer, we found that 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. If you are one of them, please support my channel by clicking that subscription, and also the bell notification link as well. Every time I drop a video, you'll get an alert. But for now, it's been a real pleasure being with you. Have a great week and take care. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is the arrival of the Sun last week into the most prominent part of your chart. So you can see at 2 degrees and 21, but near your 10th house cusp. The Sun is where we're going to really direct our energies in a particular phase. So for you, this is very much about how you connect to the wider world. Now, not everybody wants to be a business tycoon, raise their profile in terms of goals and ambitions, but whether it is to do with your leadership qualities, working in the community, guiding people that you're supportive of, that are close to you, you're just going to take a much greater leading role. And of course, last week we had that glorious conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, suggesting that over the next 14 years, you're heading in a new direction, potentially, in terms of showcasing your talents, but perhaps in a fresher way, a different way. All the skills and knowledge you've accumulated so far can be showcased in this new manner, and that process is going to be helped at the start of this week by the role of Mars. Now, Mars is in Pisces, which softens the thrust of Mars somewhat, but for you this is house 8, shared resources but business. And since Saturn moved into this position just over a year ago, you may have found it a little bit difficult to really gain the traction that you wanted, but things can really be clarified in a very dynamic way now if you're prepared to flex, because the sign of Taurus can be resistant to change and has been resistant to the attentions of Uranus full time since March 2019. So you yourself may have been a little bit reluctant or very restless around your work during that time. Now I feel the Sun's arrival gives you the chance to really put a lot of extra vitality into this area. What's not to like? Well, Pluto is in your 7th house and right on the 7th house cusp. And it's possible your determination to really go for it and showcase what makes you special could in some ways threaten someone that you're closer to who may prefer to maintain the status quo. And this can all come up to the boil on Tuesday's full moon, because over the following 2 weeks, the toggle between the thrust of the Sun and the more receptive energies of the Moon, which for you is in the 4th house, which is quite tender, means that that classic work-life balance might be a little bit hard to achieve. And part of the reason for this, if you've been more of a caregiver in a relationship, a partner may feel that that really should be your primary role. But if you're wanting to evolve from that, that's where that sense of challenge can come from. Then again, perhaps you're needing to support someone who's ambitious for themselves, and you're feeling that maybe you've got to choke off some of your desires. So those kind of equations could play out over the next couple of weeks. But it's important, if you do make a big push in terms of work, that whatever you're doing feels right. And that's what the Moon in Scorpio is asking you to consider. The complexity comes from the T-square that Pluto creates. So one way or another, whether it's your professional or personal relationships, there could be some extra potential for politics over this next fortnight. Fortunately, Mercury does go direct on Thursday. And if you've been waiting for some important information or to have a meeting, things can really start to gain traction. Also, at the start of this week, Venus is in a glorious conjunction with the position of Chiron. I feel that that's really saying to you, when it comes to your own approach to how you relate to all sorts of people, that the more knowledge you can download, the better that can be. And never underestimate the charm, very Venus, that you can bring to situations. So even if there are some tensions that do need to be diffused over the next couple of weeks, your people skills will be very important in order to do that. Leo, we found that 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. If you're one of them, I'd be very grateful if you would support the channel and click that subscription button now. Also, the bell notification symbol, so every time I drop a video, you get an alert. I hope you have a great week. Take care and goodbye. Welcome Virgo to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is that your ruler Mercury will go direct this week on Thursday. So that's something to really celebrate. If there has been some kind of tangle around a funding situation, or you're waiting for drawdown on a pension payout or a legacy, that may have had an impact. Or if you're trying to move forwards on a new business adventure, perhaps that has caused some snags too. But late last week, the Sun moved into your sister Earth sign of Taurus, joining up with the merry couple of Jupiter and Uranus. And of course, Uranus has been pushing you since 2019 full time to shake things up a little bit. Jupiter came along to support Uranus about a year ago, and then they came into exact unison last week, suggesting if you are open to change, lots of great things can develop from that. But also, the Sun does start this week, as it ended last week, in conflict, unfortunately, with Pluto. Pluto's going to have a major impact on you, particularly in terms of your work, or where you are, or where you feel obliged to help others. And the 9th house energy clashes with the 6th, could see you having to make some kind of decision, which could leave you with a little bit of a moral dilemma. So communication is going to be really important this week with Tuesday's passionate full moon in Scorpio, and perhaps the energy of Scorpio, which can be a little bit secretive would be a strong word, certainly not in a rush to share information. Perhaps there is something you do need to step forwards and reveal and ventilate a little bit, particularly if your obligations and demands in terms of the life structure is in some ways inhibiting you from really enjoying your situation as much as you would like. So, for example, if you have a job which maybe you enjoy and has given you a lot of enrichment, there's another energy coming in now which is provoking you to think, maybe I could change that or use the skills I've got now in a different, slightly modified way. Also this week, Mercury, your ruler, is pretty close to the North Node all week. When it comes to your hunches, that's a combination which really encourages you to listen to them. Mars also is very influential. He's in your opposite sign. Since Saturn moved there a year ago, it's possible that things have been a little tender at times with certain interactions. Mars gives you more confidence to say what you need. So essentially this week has a lot to do with freedom, breaking the restraints from any situation which has become more of a chore rather than a pleasure. But I must stress, we all have a responsibility to fulfill our duties. You know, with freedom comes those responsibilities. But if something has really been closing in on you for some while, I think this week's full moon is pushing you in a provocative way to think seriously about how you can shake things up, be more spontaneous, and embrace the more freedom-loving side of your sign. Virgo, we found that 55% of people who view this channel are not subscribers. If that's you too, I'd be very grateful if you could help support the channel by subscribing and also tapping or clicking on the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you should get an alert. I hope you have a great week. Take care and goodbye. Welcome Libra to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week, which provides a backdrop. The big takeout is the position of the moon. It's in your sign and it's pretty close to the south node. The south node in our natal horoscope can be the energy that we find a little bit hard to break free from. So in this case, this is more of a collective influence. But if you have found it more difficult to manifest your individuality because of that part of you that can be so sensitive to the needs of others, having the moon close to the south node at the start of this week is a big prod to really believe in what you've got to offer. And the position of Pluto continues to evoke the desire within you to showcase your talents. Now that is challenged by the sun, as it was at the end of last week, and that feeds into the full moon in the intense Scorpio on Tuesday. This second 8th house axis is intersected at 90 degrees by Pluto, so we have a T-square. You may feel, despite the effervescence of last week's Jupiter-Uranus combination, that you're still not really receiving the recognition and perhaps even the respect for all the hard work and application you've put in for a long time. But stay with it, Libra, because Mars is giving you a lot of support. He was at the end of last week too, but if you recall, Saturn has been since March last year in your sector of obligations and practicalities and your physical health. And Saturn may have made it feel like everything was quite hard going. What Mars has done since it arrived in Pisces on the 23rd of March is to give you more vitality, more endurance. And because Mars feeds into the duo of Jupiter and Uranus so energetically at the start of this week, if you can match the details with your natural gift for communication and flair, something can transform, because that's the energy of the Sun, Jupiter and Uranus, is transformation. But of course, the 8th house can be where we have to invest, but it's also where we're craving deeper connections. So for example, if you're not in a relationship, but that's something you want, perhaps this full moon has got some messages to share with you, particularly around self-worth, because the second house where the moon occurs is very much about that, and also our values as well. But Pluto is going to continue to give you a great uplift. Okay, we have an interlude from the 2nd of September to the 20th of November when he moves back into Capricorn, but over the years to come, he is going to give you such a lot of support. And I think at the moment, it just may feel that you're still having to take a lot of care and not necessarily getting quite what you're putting in back to you. But it's all about keeping the faith, because your ruling planet of Venus forges a glorious alliance with Chiron at the start of this week. If you're feeling pain about not being heard or seen or recognized, this is a very reassuring combination. Also, Mercury may be in retrograde at the start of the week, but it's in a fine link with the North Node. Listen to your instincts in terms of who you're connecting with. There may be some more adjustments you have to make in terms of your budget. If you are, with Pluto's help, being quite bold in terms of speculation or risk, maybe just throttle back a bit. But I feel as this week goes on and Mercury goes direct on Thursday, that's going to give you a green light to really start to gain traction. And it's just about having the application. Keep putting the application in. Saturn may have been a hard taskmaster over the last year, and Neptune indeed since 2012. But results will come. They're likely to come when Saturn moves into Aries for that period from May 2025 for the first blush. But keep going with the persistence. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Libra. Did you know that 55% of people who view my videos are not subscribers? If that includes you, I'd be very grateful if you'd support the channel to grow. Please click that subscription button and also the bell notification symbol. Have a great week. All the best, Patrick. Welcome Scorpio to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Your sign is known to be passionate, and this week's full moon, a once in a year annual event, is certainly going to celebrate that part of your nature. It occurs on Tuesday. But let's just wind back to the start of the week. I'm showing the event chart on the screen, and the moon is actually secluded in your 12th house as you enter this week, suggesting there may be something that you're thinking very deeply about. But Mars, your traditional ruler, is in a galvanizing link with Jupiter. That's very high energy. And if you are someone who's quite sporty or competitive or wants to test out your creativity, that combination is incredibly good. Also, Mars is continuing to link brilliantly well with Uranus, urging you to be a bit different in your approach to how you connect to people. The 7th house is our connection to others. But of course, the Sun alighted in that area last week, immediately clashed with your modern ruler Pluto, and that influence continues as this week begins. And that takes us to that full moon. The full moon in your sign suggests that something you feel very strongly and deeply about, you may need to come into the open with this situation. If you are reluctant to do so, the fact that Pluto is in your 4th house, and Pluto can be about secrets, and is going to intersect the full moon and the Sun in a T-square, suggests over the next couple of weeks that even if you're very tentative about talking about something that's very personal to you, about a family matter, about family dynamics or connections with all sorts of people, if there's something that's working its way through your situation, there may be part of you that is a little bit hesitant to express yourself. But Venus, the planet of relating, is in a conjunction with Chiron as this week begins. And that provides a little bit of information that encourages you to trust your instincts. Also, Mercury, still in its retrograde to Thursday, is very close to the North Node. And they're in the part of your situation to do with obligations and practicalities. And it's probably a good thing to think about that, because what the full moon in our own sign can do is see us want to really evoke our individuality to the degree that we might take our eye off the wider circumstances. But essentially, the position of the Sun, Jupiter and Uranus, are suggesting if you're not happy in any kind of association, whether it's a friendship group, an individual within that group, if it is a family member or in a romantic situation, your need to ventilate your feelings about it might become quite compelling over the next couple of weeks. Mercury goes direct on Thursday, which will help because obviously that is the planet of talk and thought. And because it's been in your 6th house, the chances are that really since Mercury went retrograde, particularly on the 1st of April, there may have been quite a lot of tension and things may have felt a bit brittle. The great thing about Mercury moving on the 15th of May into opposite of sign, it will cut that, but it does square up with Pluto again. In fact, by the end of this month, Pluto's squaring with Venus as it moves into Taurus on the 29th. So this relationship issue, I feel, is going to need to be teased out. It's not going to be easy to shelve it. And maybe it's just your relationship to relationships. Maybe it doesn't involve anyone else. Perhaps it's to do with very deep changes going on within you, which Pluto in your 4th house could be evoking. For some people, this particular full moon, with Uranus in your 7th house, and Pluto intersecting the moon and the Sun, suggests that you may want to liberate yourself from something that's not working, or at the least give yourself a little bit of space, step back a little bit while you work out exactly what you need. Now, if your relationship situation is going really well, perhaps the full moon is a bit of a challenge to yourself to adapt to what's required. You know, we are needed to be more interactive in relationships, and if that's something that you've not had in your situation more recently, that's going to take a little bit of a time to work into your way of being. So have patience with yourself if a particular tie is showing promise. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Scorpio. Did you know that 55% of people who view my videos are not subscribers? If that's you too, please help my channel to grow. Click that subscription button and the bell notification symbol. Thank you so much. Have a great week. All the best, Patrick. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week, which provides a backdrop of energy. The big takeout is the sun moved late last week into the sign of Taurus, very much about practicalities, looking to try and get those economies and refinements into our situation. It's quite a virtuous transition. When the sun moves through a particular zodiac sign, it's guiding our energy to that area of activity. Now, of course, your ruler Jupiter is already there, has been for a year, and Uranus 4 times since 2019. Uranus may have made things choppy, unsettled and unsettling in the interim. Jupiter over the last year has brought a greater sense of purpose, but it's been a lot of sacrifice, and the sun comes along now and will, over the next 4 weeks, give you an opportunity to really cash out on all that application. But initially, the sun is being trapped or squared by Pluto. That happened at the end of last week. As you come into this week, that's still very much ongoing. But the full moon, which occurs on Tuesday, is in the deep and very sensitive sign of Scorpio, which for you is your 12th house. The 12th house energy, therefore, of the moon competes with the 6th house energy of the sun, Uranus and Jupiter. But Pluto is in a T-square between the two positions. Pluto's in the part of your situation to do with ideas, everyday conversation, technology. If you work in an environment which is quite highly charged, and you need to be very careful about details, but also be very applied and dedicated, I feel there's going to be a lot of intensity this week, which could be a little bit unsettling. Also, the 12th house, where the position of the moon manifests itself, could push you to embrace some parts of your own nature or activities which you're not keen to do. Could be some concerns, some anxieties, the shadow side of your nature, the more psychological part of your being. If you are feeling, for example, less than 100% optimally energized, then what the full moon is saying is there some kind of psychological dimension within the mix? I mean, usually it's something of all of it, because we are holistic beings. But Pluto can be an asset in a way if it provokes you to find out some information or has a discussion that can help you in terms of creating that balance between the spiritual and the physical parts of your existence. Also, as the week begins, Mars gives you huge support, and it's linked to Jupiter and Uranus. Now, Uranus in the 6th house could see you restless to make some changes to your domestic abode this week with Mars's support, but what you have is the energy to do it. So although the moon is very sensitive and there may be something that does need to be looked at or talked through, I feel the drive you have to improve things is very strong. Also, your 5th house is enriched by a great link between Mercury and the North Node, and Venus and Chiron, and that's very much about showcasing your talent. And your creative talent can then be packaged into something that works, which is the 6th house energy of where the sun is. So there are gains, and then later in the week, Mercury moves forwards. Now, Mercury went into a retrograde on the 1st of April, and if something has been treading water, something that's important to you, things should start to pick up momentum. But this possibly complex full moon could have implications in your professional situation as well, because it may be that someone might raise an issue that is a little bit tender, but try to take it in your stride. You are a very dynamic person with loads of enthusiasm and an appetite to keep expanding and exploring, and that's your great gift. And essentially the stars at the moment are asking you to be a bit more pragmatic. It may not be terribly sexy, but it can be very valuable. And it is mainly about getting that good balance between your emotional, spiritual and psychological well-being and your physical well-being. So if that means making some changes to your diet or exercise, giving yourself more time to rest, meditate, chill out, embrace some natural healing, all of those things can be very good. So you can gain from this full moon, but there could be something that gets said or some information you gain through Pluto's interaction in the event, which could just be a bit jarring, but ultimately could be very good for you. Sagittarius, we found that 55% of people who watch my channel are not subscribers. If you're one of them, please subscribe and support this channel and help it to grow. Have a great week. Thank you so much for joining me, and goodbye. Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. Your popularity could be high this week, Capricorn, and you may have to make some decisions over your time management. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. Now, Mars in the sign of Pisces, which for you is about everyday conversation, continues to support the dynamic duo of Jupiter and Uranus, which crested together last week in such a sparkling way. But of course, the sun moved late last week into your 5th house as well. Now, because you've had such a lot of energy packed into your 4th house, very much more emotional, reflective, to do with foundations, and you still have Venus and Mercury in those locations, both forging, you can see, very nice links. Mercury is with the North Node and Venus with Chiron at the start of this week. So I feel that some of the emotional bumps that may have crept in over the last 3 or 4 weeks may well start to even out this week. But the full moon, which occurs on Tuesday, is in the passionate sign of Scorpio. So something that may have been a little hidden may come into the open. But what the sun, Jupiter and Uranus are asking you to do with Mars's support is manifest your passion, your enthusiasm, but your talent. What's not to like? Well, it's just the moon is in your 11th house of the collective, and with Pluto in the 2nd house intersecting the moon and also the sun, maybe there is somebody that is in your friendship circle, you're close to, who could be a little bit green-eyed at some of the developments that happen for you as this week goes on. Just be conscious that that's a possibility. Also, the 5th house, where the sun's moved into, is the sector of speculation, of risk. Your sign is generally very cautious about stepping forwards into new opportunities. But with Pluto in influencing the sun, there could be quite an intense urge to do something which moves your situation forwards, because Pluto is about change in a way which is dynamic, but I wouldn't rush it. And again, your friendships could be influenced because values that you have may not quite mesh with someone else. So that's why your time management is going to be important. And there will be people who want to spend time with you, but there could be someone you may want to separate yourself somewhat from. And that's partly because of Uranus in your 5th house. It's really pushing you with Jupiter's support and Mars feeding in to steadfastly stick with what makes you really switched on and excited and where you come to life. So if there is a demand from someone, or someone's in some way trying to influence your situation with their outlook or worldview, which is not quite meshing with what you want to do at the moment, that can be inhibiting. And I feel that's going to be a sense of relief, because Mercury in the 4th house is rather like Mercury in Cancer. It's as if your thinking has been somewhat circular. There may have been, or has been, a particular issue which has been going around your thoughts and been a little bit hard to get off, like almost like a roundabout. So Mercury going direct will help that. You'll really get uplift when Mercury darts into Taurus on the 15th of May. But for now, the emotional issue which may have felt uncertain, or a little bit of insecurity that's been washing around can start to ease off. So a very dynamic week, but there is going to be a bit of a challenge between what you want to do and manifest and what other people have expectations of you, and keeping everyone happy all of the time may prove to be somewhat of a challenge. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Did you know, Capricorn, that 55% of people who watch my channel are not subscribers? If that's you, please support my channel and subscribe. Please click on the sub button and also the bell notification symbol. Have a great week, take care and goodbye. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. That provides a backdrop for the whole week. The big takeout this week is the full moon in the deep and passionate Scorpio on Tuesday. But as the week begins, the moon is in your sister air sign of Libra, very much about communication. Also in your third house, which is Aries, you have a great connection between Mercury and the North Node and Venus and Chiron on the first day. Although Mercury doesn't come out of its retrograde until Thursday, I think this is great for getting dialogue moving. But also the Sun late last week did move to join up with your modern ruler Uranus and Jupiter in your fourth house. The Sun, as it moves through each sign, guides our energy to work with that in the best way we can. So what Uranus has done over recent years has made things possibly quite choppy, changeable, unpredictable, and that's not been easy. Jupiter brings a big view of the situation and helps you to make sense of things, and Mars, which aligned with both superbly well at the end of last week, feeds into them very supportively at the beginning of this. So if you wanted to make some physical changes to your home, decorating, do it yourself, upgrading, your energy and drive to achieve that can be strong. It's just, Aquarius, that by Tuesday, the square between Pluto and the Sun, which was there last week, is really amplified by the full moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio for you is house 10, which is a contraindication because the moon in Scorpio can be quite shielded, all the way to being very guarded, sometimes even secretive. But the 10th house moon is difficult to disguise how we feel. And that's facing back to the Sun in the fourth house, where you could be feeling more tender or sensitive. But Pluto in your sign is intersecting both positions, so a T square. And Pluto in your sign is really pushing you to find your voice. So there may be something, a tender issue around the family or your home life, or it may be to do with your work, where you can bring your powers of perception, Pluto, to bear. But it may be by doing so that could create a little bit of turbulence. But that's where Mercury going direct on Thursday is so helpful. Because ever since the 1st of April, the retrograde to Mercury has probably created some challenges, whether it's to your tech, to communications, unreliability of certain situations that you've encountered. So Mercury going forwards is always something to welcome for sure. But I think the big picture is that if you are feeling a little bit unsettled in your job because it doesn't feel right, Pluto's role really is to provoke you to find a change. But that change at the moment may be difficult to contemplate because the desire for security can be quite strong. But what Pluto may do is evoke within you the overall strategy, even if the timing doesn't feel right at the moment. Then again, it could be that your focus is much more to do with your home situation, but there are other people that you need to support, and that maybe in some ways takes you away from where you want to direct your energy. So there's a little bit of counter energies to what you may want to do. Pluto's given you a real strength of will. The energy in Aries is very strong. Mercury going direct. It's all very quick moving and positive. But there may be some tender issues that just need to be picked over and discussed in a delicate way, but something could get revealed or come into the open. But once it does, I feel that there is going to be a sense of relief, because then you can address it in your inimitable way. Aquarius, did you know 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers? If that's you, please help support this channel and click that subscription button and also the bell notification symbol. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Have a great week and goodbye. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 22nd of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is the position of Mars in your sign. Mars loves being in the first house. That's what he influences through its rulership of the sign of Aries. So it's a time to really embrace and manifest our individuality and have self-belief in it. Can also bolster your physical vitality, which may have been affected, to be honest, over the last year by the limiting and rather draining influences of Saturn and Neptune. And Mars starts this week, like he ended last week, in a tremendous alliance with Jupiter. So you've got Jupiter, the planet of growth, connecting with Mars, the planet of action. Jupiter's in your third house, which is quick movements, but also quick ideas, very close to the electric Uranus. So the chances are, as you come into this week, you could be feeling quite bubbly. And there is a real opportunity for you to showcase to people the nimbleness of your ideas, but also the fact that you can be fun to be with. So there's a lot of energy. And of course, the Sun moved to support up with Jupiter and Uranus late last week into your third house. And therefore, life is probably going a bit quicker. What's not to like? Well, it's just that we do have a clash between Pluto and the Sun, which, if you recall, did emerge last week. It's still in place this week, but it is going to enmesh the full moon, which occurs on Tuesday, in your sister water sign. Now for you, that's house 9, very much about widening your horizons, travel, philosophy, higher education. The third house is about our everyday communications, short journeys. Ninth house, longer journeys. But the position of Pluto is in the 12th house, and the 12th house and Pluto is a very powerful location for this planet, which can be about transformations, can be very psychological, can be about things that have been kept quiet, but it also can be about leverage. So you may encounter someone over the next couple of weeks where you have an interaction with them, and maybe it's going to be quite bubbly. You could even be quite flirty with one another, but you need to be mindful of what is really the subtext of what they're saying, but also understand your own motives as well, because Pluto in the 12th house is not an influence to ignore. And therefore, our quick words, the third house, are competing with the part of our situation which is to do with being more in touch with our higher philosophies, the 9th house. So there is some complexity from that full moon that Pluto feeds into. So things may be moving quicker, but sharing information quickly without care is probably not the best thing, because something could spill out that you would prefer to keep close to your chest, something that's quite confidential, or someone could tell you something and want you to keep it close to your chest, and that's going to be something that you will have to be aware of. So some intense conversations over the next couple of weeks, and some of them can be very engaging, flirty and fun. Your ideas can be bubbly, effervescent, things are moving quickly, but don't ignore the more psychological dimension of any conversation. But Mars in your sign certainly gives you a lot more stamina. And after the bruising that Saturn has inflicted over the last year, that is welcome. But what about the other players? Well, Mercury's close to the North Node as the week begins, yet still in retrograde, and Venus is close to the position of Chiron. Your financial situation, if there has been something a bit blocked, or you've been waiting to find out something that's to do with the stability of your situation, by Thursday when Mercury goes forwards, you will get that news. And hopefully it's going to be really good news for you, because trust your instincts, because with Mercury close to the North Node, the chances are that what you think will happen probably will. And also Venus continues its journey in your second house. So money has or could still come to you. It's a very positive part of Venus's journey. However, as the week goes on, I feel that the energy from that full moon is really at the heart of the story this week for you. So a lot of extra communication can be going on, but very important to try to read between the lines. So as much as there can be some, lovely, light, and as I say, perhaps flirty conversations, some other more serious conversations will require you to be much more perceptive about where people are really coming from and what they're trying to say, even if they're not using the actual words to express that point of view. It's been a pleasure being with you, Pisces. Did you know that 55% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers? If one of them is you, please subscribe to my channel and help it grow. If you click on the sub button, also click on the bell symbol, and then every time I upload a video, you'll get an alert. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and goodbye.